Today we're going to answer the question that's been on a lot of people's minds since Silksong released earlier this month. Is Lace a child? Before we get into it, a quick disclaimer, this video contains spoilers including events beyond Act 2, so please proceed at your own risk. Now, I understand why this has become such a point of contention within the community. At the beginning of the game, we know very little about this mysterious character that keeps popping up. In fact, we know very little about where we even are or why we're here, all of which is answered as the story progresses. Okay, so on the surface, the answer feels easy. Like, Hornet consistently refers to her as a child, NPCs refer to her as a child, she's described as having the look and mind of a child, and she even calls herself one at one point. But if you scratch the surface, the question gets a lot messier. She is something stranger, something sadder. Let's start by asking the question, what does it mean to be a child? I just realised all of these years that I've been alive, every single decision that I've made in my lifetime has led to this moment, to this video, to this very topic. What am I doing with my life? That is a question for another day. Back on topic, for many of us it is a phase of life. It is a transitional period of time defined by dependency on others, a lack of maturity, and the expectation of growth. We also have legal definitions that are based on that often use age as the border between childhood and adulthood, and then there's always those weird people who have those ages memorized, but I could write an entire essay about my feelings towards them. There's also other ways that we use the term child, like I am a child to my parents. There's no age limit on being someone's child. That is intrinsically part of who I am as a person. We also call someone a child when they're behaving poorly or they're exhibiting childlike traits. However, a lot of that isn't as relevant as you'd think, because a lot of the discourse stems from us, humans, trying to fit Lace into our real-world societal standards and definitions for what constitutes a child, many of which are running with the very literal definition, saying that Lace is either young in age or still hasn't developed her frontal lobe, which doesn't work here. None of our rules and frameworks work here, because we're not talking about humans. These are divine beings beyond our comprehension. We cannot project our definition of a child onto Lace and call it a day, especially when we know that Lace was neither born from natural reproduction, nor does she experience aging like many of us. I promise it is not just a really good skincare regime and a bit of Botox. Our first proper interaction with Lace comes in Act 1 in Deep Docks, and I say proper because of the wildly accepted theory that Lace was the one who broke Hornet out of the cage in the opening cutscene, which is my headcanon too, that's what I believe. I'm just kind of undecided on whether it's because Lace wanted to give Hornet a chance to escape, since she does believe that Hornet is even better off dead than heading up to the cradle to see what's waiting for her, and then Lace isn't best pleased when Hornet decides to stick around, or because Lace was hoping to have some more time separated from Mother Dearest while she's still in that sleep-like state. And apparently, I haven't done this myself, if you skip the Deep Docks fight altogether, Lace will then go and meet you at the bridge that you fall off in the opening cutscene. Like, she knows way too much to have not been involved. Anyway, that's for the main story video. This one is just about Lace specifically. That first fight is when you first hear Hornet call Lace child, to which Lace calls Hornet a little spider. And some people believe that Hornet says child with the intention to insult Lace, and others believe that Hornet says child because Hornet's so old that nearly everyone is a child compared to her. My interpretation is that it's not intended to be an insult, but instead an observation of an identity. I think it is very important for us to experience this moment where Hornet's perception of Lace in this early scene is child, when she knows very little about her. The same way I think it is very important for Lace's reaction to pose a challenge, while also being somewhat patronising and bratty, also part of her identity for good reason. Hornet doesn't know what Lace is going into this exchange, but has sensed something childlike about her. Following the fight, we get her entry into the Hunter's Journal, or at least we will get it when we bump into New and Greymore, which continues to keep that mystery going because we only get the first part of the description, manic fencer who delights in battle. So this is where I apologise for fueling the Lace as a child argument. Like, I did make that video, what your favourite Silksong boss says about you, Act 1 edition, making a joke about Lace being a child and, you know, hitting children, but I was going to include Lace in every act, in every video. That was part of the bit. I can only joke about hitting children in the first act version because at this point in the game, we're still learning who she is. And then everything goes straight out the window when we get to the end of our second fight with Lace. In fact, this is when everything starts to come together and we get a much better idea about Lace's true nature. Lace isn't a normal bug. She wasn't born in any traditional sense, but instead woven out of thread. She is a sapient construct built to fulfill a very specific role, which is to be the loyal child to her mother. She was created, spun from silk, to be a child, and she knows that, so child is the role she internalizes. That's the very purpose of her life, or at least how she sees it. So she's not able to grow and mature and express independence like a child usually would to transition into adulthood, simply because she is so dependent on her mother that she isn't afforded the opportunity to flourish without her. Like, it is literally impossible. We learn after the fight through the Hunter's Journal that a lot of silk would have been required to sustain her life, and all of that is, at least what I believe, the crux of these child comments. Lace feels almost like a Peter Pan figure, frozen in time, unable to age out of the role, except unlike Peter Pan, this isn't freedom from adulthood, it is a cage. Lace is forever shackled to her mother, bound by expectations she never chose, unable to become independent. And that's probably why Lace acts the way that she does. She's bratty, cruel, and playful in a way that only children can be, but it is a performance, a mask, it's what she's supposed to be. And this is where Lace's tragedy comes in. Think of her line in the cradle after we play our needle in, "A child too broken." This isn't self-awareness in the way we'd hope, it's resignation. She knows what she's supposed to be, but she can't actually fulfill it. She uses a child facade as a mask that falls apart the longer that we interact with her. Like, she's willing to burn the whole world down, not out of malice, but because destruction is the only agency she's allowed. That's not immaturity in my books, that's despair. It's also worth mentioning the caretaker's truth bomb about Lace after you finish the fight, where they describe her as having the look of a child and a mind to match, because she was created that way and never ages. But then they go on to acknowledge that she's existed longer than the rest of the bugs in the Citadel. She's still described as a child because she wasn't made to grow. She was made to embody the role of a child forever. Now, there's a lot that I could say about Hornet's relationship with Lace throughout each act, Lace's perception of her mother's feelings towards her, and how important that is for the events of Act 3. But again, that's for a different video. I do want to bring up how interesting the parallels are between Hornet and Lace, though. Both of them have divine parentage with incredibly intense expectations and duties thrust upon them almost immediately, but Hornet was robbed of a childhood, forced straight into this independent adult role, whereas Lace's fate is the opposite and forced to stay put. So, let's get back to the main question at hand. Is Lace a child? Well, not in the way that we understand it. I'm sorry for the ambiguous answer, but it's true. She appears childlike in that she embodies the outward form, the behaviors, and the cultural role of childhood, and I know that there are people on the internet who disagree with that heavily, saying that she doesn't look like a child, but I don't think we have enough information to know what a child specifically looks like for each different type of bug in the world of Hollow Knight. And I think it is better to just go on the context clues that we're given and the information that we've been provided with. Everyone else has this perception of Lace as a child for a reason. However, Lace is older than entire generations and has just never been afforded the option of growth, maturity, or genuine innocence. Like, she was built as a tool. She's never been able to have childhood innocence. All three of those things are very much a part of the child experience, or at least as we know it. Personally, I believe that she is not a child, but instead the idea of childhood, fixed and weaponized, sustained artificially by silk and expectation. Her tragedy relies in being denied the very thing that childhood implies, the chance to grow beyond it. Which would mean, as an example, her immaturity isn't immaturity at all. That is her permanent state. That is where she's supposed to be. And all of this is ultimately what makes Lace such a compelling character. She embodies the horror of eternal childhood, but not the dream of youth preserved in a I'm gonna be young forever kind of way, but the nightmare of an identity frozen in time, never allowed to change, never able to transition from childhood to adulthood. And the final question, is it safe to be horny over lace, or are you going to be put on a watch list? Personal feelings on the matter aside, lace is a sentient pile of thread older than any of us here, depicted in the form of a fictional bug. Like, if none of that is a deal breaker, I am not giving you permission, okay? I think it is a little weird personally, and I just don't have any thoughts or feelings about Lace's sexuality, or how she might express that, or who she might be interested in, or what kind of experience she's had in that world. I don't know if it's addressed in the game, and I've just kind of like switched off to that, but yeah, if I consider any kind of sexuality of Lace, or any sexual experiences or romantic experiences, there's just nothing there. For me, it's just like a little mental block. It's just not a thought that's entered my mind at all. So there's that. There's your answer about whether Lace is a child. I hope you enjoyed that. That is the first of the many, many lore videos that I want to create, addressing hopefully more hard-hitting questions than that. But it's a hot topic, you know? So if you've enjoyed the video, please give it a like, a share it with people who have different opinions on the matter. I don't mind. Let me know your opinion on the matter in the comments. I'd love to hear it. And thank you for watching. Make sure you subscribe for the next videos, and I'll see you in the next one.